Good evening, sir. How are you?
I'm doing fine,
Hey, Danny
thanks.
boy.
Aloha.
Oh, you're in Hawaii, Dan?
Yeah, I'm on vacation in Hawaii.
Uh, he's seeing his daughter, his son, and a newborn baby.
I'm sorry, say that again?
Beautiful. I said, Dan is in Hawaii. It's a vacation, but he's there to see his son and his son's newborn child. So
That's
his
right.
granddaughter.
That's right.
Beautiful, beautiful. Dan, we got together here tonight. We're just talking about all different things, and I know that we're a little bit limited as to what we can discuss because of the S1 and the SEC with the uplist process and all that stuff. But some people had some questions on the general functionality of the bond, and not to disclose anything we can't, but maybe we could just give a little bit of a mini update as to what's happening there. And I appreciate you jumping on such short notice, bud.
And I'm going to jump in real quick before you jump in, Dan. Frank, I think you should give a little
The
introduction. It was kind of last minute that we got Dan in here, and I don't know that
to
everybody knows who
us.
Dan is. So,
Okay, Dan is the
Can you hear
CEO of
me?
Clean Vision. I've been with Clean Vision for over 3 years, and Dan and I, we've been, hand in hand in this from the very beginning. So I appreciate him jumping in a little bit and answering any questions that he can regarding this. I'm assuming that he doesn't have a ton of time. He's with his family, but we'll try to we'll try to get a few things out there. Dan, the main question was, how does this? Can you kind of explain the mechanics of the bond a little bit? Just how does that work?
Yeah,
How is it collateralized, things like that?
yeah. And you guys can hear me, right?
Very well, thank you.
Okay,
we
good.
can hear you, Dan. Can you hear us okay? We can hear
Yeah, I
you,
can.
but
Yeah, yeah.
okay, great.
So, as we announced in the press release several weeks ago, the advisory firm, the financial advisory firm Grant Thornton, approached us to launch a bond, a green bond in Europe. And we've been down the path now with Grant Thornton for probably 3 or 4 months, actually, maybe 3 months. So they've sponsored the effort. They're doing all the legal, and we've engaged them for also all of the international tax, so that we can do as much tax avoidance as we can, so we can use the money in multiple jurisdictions. The country of Georgia, all throughout the U.S., in India, in Morocco, and we have to be very cautious about how we set things up from a tax perspective, international tax perspective. Part of that was to establish a company in the United Kingdom, Clean Seas UK, and a company working in concert with basically an administration company called Super Global. They use the word administration. We would call it compliance over here. So what's going to end up happening is the Super Global company is going to assign us a compartment, is what they call it, essentially a shell in Luxembourg. So all of the financing that happens as a result of the green bond, that vehicle, the money will flow into Luxembourg, from Luxembourg to Clean Seas UK, under a tax treaty between Luxembourg and Great Britain, and then distributed from UK out to the subsidiaries. That's the structure of how the money will flow. The structure of the bond itself will be, it's a 7% coupon, it's a 10-year term, and it's a 1-year interest holiday. So we don't pay interest until month 25, really, okay? Um, that way we can establish the facilities, we can generate revenue, we can start paying down the note. It's a $340 million issuance is what we're going for. So and it's all being set up by our friends at Grant Thornton and of course Super Global. Part of what Super Global's responsibility is to get us certified or rated, if you will, by a company called International Shareholder Services, ISS. They are in the midst of completing, I should say, um, uh, an audit, a green audit for us, so that once we have their sign off, which we hope is imminent, probably next week, they will then certify that this is a clean investment, so that any company, any institution, any investor that's looking to put their capital into an ESG investment for whatever reason, whether it's just a feel-good investment or whether they can avail themselves of the tax benefits of making an ESG type of financing. Doesn't matter to me. In any case, it's going to need the ISS stamp of approval, and we'll have that next week. So we expect that we will be issuing this bond come January 8th or 9th. No point in doing it next week. Nobody's in their office. Second week of January, we're going to hit the ground running is our plan. Okay? That's the way the bond will work. It is not uncommon for ESG bonds to operate like this with an ISS rating, with a sponsor. In this case, our sponsor is Grant Thornton, and be an unrated, unlisted green bond. That's very common in Europe. Okay, so that's basically what we're doing.
Appreciate it. Dan, my general, actually, Swing, what's up?
All right. So this was, I think you guys announced that back in like October of 2023, Dan?
Yeah, something like that. I don't have the exact date in front of me, but that sounds about right.
All right. So this bond is what type of bond? Security bond? I mean, is it like backed by something? I mean,
it's a green bond, so it carries the ISS rating. It's unsecured and it's unrated. It's what they call a gray market bond. And in Europe, in the EU, gray market bonds, as long as they have ESG approval, ISS in this case, are easily sold, is what I'm being told. Now, easily sold and money in the bank are two different things, as you guys know. And we'll find out very early in January how soon we can start subscribing. One of the interesting things about this bond, though, is that the money is not escrowed. So that as soon as we start drawing it down, that investment starts accruing interest, but we have access to that capital.
Okay. So from the business model, I mean, because look, Dan, I've always been a fan. I love the technology. I love what you guys are doing with the oceans. So let me ask you this. Is there a plan moving forward to actually garner more attention when it comes to CLNV, Clean Vision, with other contracts, whether it be internationally or even, in the U.S. or Canada? Number one. But number two. Go ahead.
To do what? Well, say that again. To do what in number one?
Okay, so
let me simple that up for him. How do you plan on expanding the reach of the company going forward? You plan to expand to Canada or Europe? Yeah, I'm here. You got me?
Yeah. What did you just say?
I think he's trying to ask how we plan to expand the footprint of the company. Am I right, Swing?
Okay. All right. So
yes.
The expansion plan is this. I'm only able to use the capital coming from the bond for the projects that I have listed in the ISS document. Okay? Which is Morocco, West Virginia, Arizona, and the country of Georgia. And so some money for expansion in India. But that will deliver 7 lines at 100 tons a day. So we'll have to buy 7 pyrolysis reactors for all of those facilities that I mentioned. There is an expansion plan beyond that, but that will be, what's being contemplated now would be a second bond. So the proceeds of the first bond, the 340, subject to our concluding it, right, our fully subscribed bond, that will then allow us to go and start executing on the plan. If we do so responsibly and start showing revenue, then we will launch a second bond, which will then fill out the capital need for all of the other territories.
Dan, let me ask a simple question. With 7 lines operating at 100 tons a day, what does that revenue look like, ballpark?
$7 million a month, gross revenue.
So 7 lines a day. So you're talking about roughly about somewhere around 100 million a year.
Yep.
Is that right?
Yep.
There you go.
Okay. And we
Where
expect that it
would
will take us about 18 months to get all 7 lines up and running, assuming the bond closes at 340 million.
What position does that put Clean Vision in the pyrolysis plastic space?
As far as industry,
What are we number 10, number 20?
Our largest competitor right now is trying to get to 100, and they're failing miserably because their tech sucks. So if we are able to do half of what I said, we're 3 times larger than our nearest competitor.
There you go.
So if I can, then Dan, I ask this question every single time. Again, welcome to the conversation, Dan. Hello, my friend. I love what you're doing, and a happy holidays, spending it with the family. So we don't want to keep you too long. But as far as technology goes, I know that was a question that was previously asked. Have you gotten any further along with looking at what was it, the French unit versus the other unit? Does that matter at this point, or is it something you're still looking at as far as
we have decided on the technology. It's an Indian-based technology. That's all I'm going to say. And myself and 4 of my engineers are going to India on January 9th. We will be at the facility where the system is up and operational, and it has been so for 10 years, running 100 tons a day. So we'll be there on the 15th, 16th, 17th. Then we go to the place where they will manufacture our units on the 18th and 19th, and I come home on the 19th. So I am 100% confident in the technology that we'll be deploying right away. The French unit arguably is kind of on a back burner right now. We've got some issues with the designer. It's not performing as it was advertised. Plastic is a very difficult thing to process. You have a lot of difficult byproducts, wax being one of the biggest issues, and it's not handling the feedstock well, from what we're hearing. So I am not taking any chances with this green bond. I'm going to put 7 Indian facilities up literally around the world and start generating revenue as the largest pyrolysis company in the world, so that we can launch a second bond, get our portfolio up into whatever it would be, hopefully in the order magnitude of thousands of tons a day globally, and then start looking at what petrochemical company we should be entertaining an exit with.
Thank you, Dan. I appreciate it. Yeah, that makes sense, because I know that was a question by an individual that you know as well. But this space is being recorded this time, so I've got individuals in here that have been asking about CLNV, which we'll get into later and not burden you with that time. But yeah, that was one of the big questions. Thank you for clarifying that and updating us on the technology side. If I could, Dan, unless Frank's got another question or somebody else, um, you know, can you just explain your thought process again? I know I've asked you this before, your thought process on looking at alternative types of financing. So we're all of us, many of us sitting in here in the conversation tonight are watching CEOs and what they do or don't do. And you, I know aside with Frank, have been very, very focused on doing everything carefully, all the way down to what you just said, looking at the technology. I'm not going to waste any money doing anything on this or that unless I know it's going to work and be beneficial.
Right.
So can you talk about the alternative financing, spin that back to the bond, and what you guys are doing in your vision, utilizing that for shareholders?
Okay, so look, the reason I'm so eager to get this bond done, obviously we need the capital, we want to grow fast. It's non-dilutive, right? It's debt, of course, but we can service the debt based on the way we've modeled out the business. So I'm not worried about that. I don't want to bring on any more dilution if possible. Now, I'm saying that in the midst of the fact that I've got to get a bond done. We don't know how long that will take. It could be a week, it could be a month, it could be a quarter. I don't know. We'll know as soon as we issue the bond and we start soliciting it for investment. And that means if I have to bring on a little bit of debt along the way or a little bit of dilution along the way, it is what it is. I mean, I'm being as cautious as a CEO can possibly be to protect shareholder value, but balancing that fine line between, having to take my foot off the gas pedal because we don't have the resources we need in order to execute, and going down the path of getting some other, non-dilutive, shareholder-friendly investment in the door. And it is a balancing act, right? My goal is to do this with debt and not equity whenever possible. But if we have to sell a little equity to get down the road, as long as we use that money wisely and it gets us to where we need to be, it's good for the shareholders. At the end of the day, dilution is not bad if it's used properly, if that equity is used properly. I think the OTC world has seen too many CEOs go ahead and do all sorts of crazy financings so they can make their Ferrari payments. That's not me. I'm building a business. Every nickel that I raise goes into the company. There is no waste in this company. And it's all with the idea to get to the larger financing so that we can start deploying.
Guys, just so you know, and you can all laugh at him with me because I laugh at him. Dan drives the Prius.
I mean, look, Frank keeps asking me for more money. He's just not getting it, Sorry,
You
Frank.
just stop the madness. Dan's lying right there because he knows that one of the biggest blocks of him doing any stupid financing is having to deal with me because I fight with him tooth and nail to not do anything of that nature. So.
Oh, yeah. And guys, we go through this a lot. I talk to Frank 3 times a day. And whenever there is any sort of financing coming down the pipe, I have committed to him that I will not surprise him with anything untoward. With anything, whether it's, positive or negative types of financing. He will know what's coming down before I close that deal. I'm not going to sandbag him.
Well, that brings up a very good point, Dan, and I'm going to stick up for Frank, even though Frank doesn't need more money. He works for free. We all know that. He comes out here and hangs
He
out with
told me
us,
this
so
was
he
a
don't need any
hobby
more.
for him, that he's personally wealthy and this is a hobby.
But no, we take care of Frank out here as well. Dan, you did bring up a great point. Not all financing or dilution is bad as long as it's being utilized correctly. And Frank's brought this point up before as well. And I think retail is starting to be well. We're actually not accustomed to it. We're not accustomed to CEOs saying, "Hey, that's what I like about you, Dan, personally. Regardless of everybody else in the room here, between me and you, that's what I like about you. There's no fluff. There's no like, I'm going to pretend, I'm going to, do this over here quietly. That's what I like about you, Dan. As long as you keep doing that, you have a shareholder like myself that will stand by you through the rough, the tough, the thick, the thin, and
I
celebrations.
really appreciate that.
So I
Thank you.
think that's what retail needs is CEOs like yourself that just say, hey, this is what we need to do. We got to keep the lights on. We got to do this. This is what we're doing. We're not wasting money. And I'm going to be honest with you, and we'll stand with you by your side through that because we believe. So that's a super important detail I think retail needs to
Thank
hear
you.
on somebody like
Yeah.
yourself and be mindful of with other CEOs.
Well, look, it's also a perception issue for other investors and other opportunities. If we curl up and, crawl into our shell because we can't afford to keep going fast, the market's going to see that. The market's already starting to say, who the heck is Clean Seas? How are they able to get all these deals all over the place? When I'm talking to these major chemical companies, and they're major companies, guys, you know the names. I'm not going to say them. And they tell me, how did you secure this portfolio? We've read your press releases. Our portfolio is bigger than everybody else's exponentially. Okay? And it's a question of execution. So if I have to take my foot off the gas and slow down a feedstock deal or slow down the conversations for new opportunities, that just doesn't look good to the market. I need to go hard, I need to go fast, and keep these conversations active and alive so that first quarter of next year, they're meaningful. And when the bond closes and we start breaking ground in the jurisdictions that I've mentioned, and they've been publicly announced, these chemical companies are going to be calling me. And if you guys want to go take a look at a Dow Chemical shareholder, not it wasn't excuse me, it wasn't a shareholder um, report. It was the CEO of Dow was on CNBC, I believe it was, basically saying he needs 1 million tons of pyrolysis oil, plastic pyrolysis oil, a day, I believe it was, in order to meet his demand. 1 million tons a day. That is just such a gigantic number that, I mean, the industry, complete industry, is probably doing maybe 1,000 tons a day right now. And he's looking to get to 1 million. Well, how's Dow going to do that without acquiring every little pyrolysis company on the planet? They're going to aggregate it. They can't do it themselves. And you can go look up that article or that interview. It was public. It was public about, I guess, 3 or 4 weeks ago. My phone rang off the hook when our colleagues heard that. Okay.
Dan, I have another area that I wanted to possibly discuss. Uh, West Virginia. I know that we've been trying to move that ball down the path as quickly as possible. Is there anything new going on there?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's a lot going on. I don't want to tell you specifics because it's not public yet. We are working through government agencies. Let me just leave it at that. We believe we have the agency quagmire, if you will, solved, and then we ran into the Christmas holiday. In respect to the folks that I'm dealing with on the government level, I'm not going to try and reach them until the 2nd of January. They're home with their families. West Virginia's, EDA and DED, Department of Economic Development and Economic Development Authority. Those guys they're out for the holiday, and I've got their cell numbers, but I'm not going to be that guy that calls them over the break. It wouldn't make sense because nothing's going to get done. But I have
And
heard
they just
good
they
assurance that
they
we'll get it done
they
at the
just
first of the year.
reshuffled them. Correct? They just reshuffled how that process goes, if I'm not mistaken.
Um, they're in the process of sorting it out. Again, it's not public, so I don't want to comment. We hope
That's fair.
we have a press release drafted and approved that will be issued as soon as they give me the green light, which I'm hoping is early in January, and then I'll be able to disclose all the information. Look,
So I've got
Okay.
one more. I got another follow-up question,
okay,
Dan, and this is the one that I always ask you. Are we still looking at the opportunity to once? I think once deals are settled and you guys start going full speed, gas pedal to the floor. Is it still? Is the company still looking at transitioning from OTC to NASDAQ? Is that still on the
as
table?
quickly as possible. Okay, I want Nasdaq excuse me, I want OTC in my rearview mirror first quarter of next year if possible. But we have to go through the process of having our S1 cleared through the SEC. It will be resubmitted early January. It's going to require a audit of our Moroccan facility. So there's going to be a lot of work that needs to be done. Okay, it's not going to happen overnight, but we will get it done, and we will look to uplist this to a senior exchange. Okay, could be Nasdaq, could be NYSE, a senior exchange, so that we can be perceived as a legit, real company. And I don't want to disparage any other OTC companies. I'm sure there are lots of fine ones there, but from a perspective of, a perception of quality, we need to be on a senior exchange.
And that would be a follow-up question too. So getting onto a senior exchange, doesn't that open the door for additional lookers and eyes on the company as far as your global expansion projects and whatnot? I mean, obviously it changes things, but looking at, being on a senior exchange
Absolutely.
gets
So look,
larger organizations looking at you.
yeah, but there's a lot of things in it, in the air, right? A lot of balls in the air, a lot of plates spinning. West Virginia is one of them. The green bond is another. I need those dominoes to fall in order to make the senior exchange something that is really meaningful. Right? What happens if we get something done with West Virginia and or the green bond and we want to uplist and we've got a war chest of $300 million in the bank? It's a different kind of uplisting, isn't it?
Yeah, called the
It's not an
self-funding
OTC
uplifting. The reason,
company struggling to
no,
get uplisted. It's a very different conversation.
the reason the uplistings get hammered is because
And guys, with
90% of the
that,
time,
I would like to just
you
say
not
I
hear me?
want to wish everybody a happy new year. My family is here going, I thought we were going to dinner. And I wanted to make sure that I didn't have to listen to Frank yelling at me tomorrow by blowing off this call. But I do need to get out the door
I
with the
appreciate
family, if
that.
that's okay with everybody.
Yeah,
Thanks,
absolutely,
Dan.
Dan. Dan, can you hear Frank? Frank was talking. Can you hear Frank, Dan?
I couldn't.
Can you hear me, Dan?
Frank, try again.
Oh, can you hear me now?
No, I don't hear him.
Oh, that's not good. Can
Okay, you
everybody
don't
else
hear
hear me
Frank.
or no?
I can hear you, Frank, but Dan cannot hear you. So, Dan,
Okay.
we absolutely appreciate your time, and yes, definitely celebrate the holiday weekend with your family. Let's get 2024. It sounds like Q1 is going to be a big opportunity for the company, and we're all excited. This is again being recorded tonight, so we'll share this with everybody to get them up to speed with where Clean Vision is at, and we're excited to participate with you.
Good deal.
So very exciting.
It's going to be a great
Thank you,
year,
Dan.
guys.
I was shocked.
Oh,
Awesome. But
2024 is going to
again, thank you
happen.
for spending the time. Awesome. Or yeah, 2024. Did I say 2023? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm still stuck.
Right.
But yes, 2024 Q1, and let's go.
Sounds
Let's
good.
go. But yeah, get to your family, Dan. I appreciate you every time you stop by.
Thank you very
Good to
much,
see
guys.
you.
Happy New Year.